Hello there, ladies and gents. Andrew Griffiths here. This month we're talking about getting clarity and tightening up the focus of your book. Now, one of the really important kind of pieces of your book, and one of the things that's going to differentiate your book a great deal, uh, are your own experiences, your life lessons, the things that really no one else can copy. AI can't create those. So that's what is going to make your book different. So for starters, I'm going to say your book needs to have a lot of your personal experience and life lessons to inspire the readers and to illustrate what it is that makes you different. Okay. So I tend to say a great thing to do is to actually make up a list of your stories, anecdotes, experiences that you're going to put in the book, because it's hard to just extract those out of thin air. Um, but for each of those stories, kind of make sure you're clear on, like, if I'm going to include that in the book, what's the main takeaway? Like, what's the reason for sharing that story? And then how can readers apply that to their own kind of lives? It's all well and true to share a great story, but to what end? To what purpose? Okay, so the other thing you want to kind of, try to remember is that for when we share personal stories, that it's great if the audience can engage. So when you're sharing that story, you want to make sure, well, this is something that I can understand. If you're writing a story about walking on the moon, for a lot of people, that's a little bit hard to really kind of get their head around. It's hard to connect. It can be an inspiring story, of course, but you can't just have all those big inspirational stories. But how do I take this? How do I use this information? So we want to make sure that the stories have a purpose, there's a reason. Just because it's a good story doesn't mean that it should be included. And I encounter this quite a lot. In fact, I just had that with a client recently. A very powerful story, but it just didn't really fit in the book. It's like for me, when I'm doing a keynote presentation, if it's a room full of business people, corporates, I'm not going to get up and talk about my start in life as an orphan and growing up with, it's not relevant. So it's a good story, but it's not relevant. So we've got to say, all right, I'm putting all of these stories, these experiences together. They make the book better. If they don't make the book better, what's the point of having them? I understand that where they're going to fit. I understand that they need to have a purpose. I need to be able to tell the story with the right detail and the right perspective, and I need to be able to extract a key point out of it that makes it relevant for the reader. And that's what then makes this kind of work really, really well. And I think, again, if you can say, well, okay, I've really got clear on my central premise of my book, I understand, I've researched it, these are my unique thoughts and elements of what it is that I'm doing. Now, these are my stories and examples of my own experience with the topic. I think you're going to find straight away that your book is much more engaging and also a heck of a lot easier to write as well. So I think there's a lot there. There's more detail, of course, to talk about stories and anecdotes around, adding detail around currency and all the rest of it. But at this stage, if you ended up with kind of a list of the stories that you could use and some of that other information that I've suggested to extract, I think that would really put you in good stead. All too often, new authors in particular feel like they don't have a lot of stories or anecdotes, or there's a gap there. Well, there's always places you can go and get stories. You can share stories. You can, appropriate stories and give reference back to where you got them from, of course. But there are many ways to do this. But this is a big part of your book. Hope you found that hopeful, and I'll talk to you about this topic a little bit more throughout the month.